Good evening. Yeah. Good evening, everybody. Doing more bowls tonight. What a surprise. These are going to be the one or maybe two that we'll do tonight. They're all wet, green wood, and they're both maple. And I think they're both about 12 inches in diameter. If all goes right, if we get them to do both of them, one will be a natural edge, one will be a flat rim. And probably we'll do the flat rim one first. That's because I've been working on flat rim bowls. Did one yesterday and another 3 today. That wood that I was working with today was some of the white birch. It's not totally wet. It's also not totally dry. So it goes for the little trip to the microwave. Which I have one here after, I'll probably take a little break after I do the first bowl. And I'll bring you back over here in just 1 second. Because first order of business, we're going to put a little wax on the bedways. Because working with wet wood has a tendency to gum things up a bit. So we'll just give it just a little quick wax. And I just saw it. There it is. Just a little paste wax. That's all it really is. It's actually a furniture wax. I have some other stuff to use too, but this seems to work good. It's quick and easy. Put it on. I usually use a Scotch-Brite pad, which is what I'm using to put it on. That sort of helps clean things too. I want to get the bottom of the banjo as well so that it slides nice and free. And we can do the top of the tool rest. Give it just a couple seconds to set up a little bit. And then we'll wipe it off. As you can see, it turns the paper towel quite black. Why did that go too little? Hang on. There we go. As you can see, it makes the paper towel quite dirty. Now we're ready to do something. So we'll get the piece. Looking at these just upstairs and had dinner. That's the natural edge one. This is going to be the flat one. They were sort of both going to be a natural edge, but the one is sort of shaped in sort of a way that would lend itself to more of a flat rim bowl than a natural edge bowl. I'll show you why here in a second. This is out of a piece of this is a crotch piece. I just cut it yesterday. Chainsaw cut it yesterday. I've had it for a couple weeks or what have you. But it's got some, I saw where there's a little bit of bark that fell off. And there again, this bark is not very substantial on there. But there's some really nice rippling in it. In a couple places that I saw. So that's why I'm going to go with the flat rim to try and keep some of the more of the figure, put it that way. Because if I can keep more of the figure, then it would lend itself to a project that we could maybe play around and dye it a little bit or something like that, rather than just natural wood. So I normally try and line up the bark, but in this case I'm sort of looking for a flatter section on the bottom. It is well out of balance, as you can see. It wants to flip back over. I'm going to grab a chisel because I'm going to try and get rid of some of that bark. It has a tendency to fly anyhow. And when it flies, when you're turning, it has a tendency to always wax me in the head. Or the fingers, one of the two. When it whacks you in the fingers, it does have a tendency to smart a little bit. Like I say, it's not very secure. You can see it's going to come off in one giant sized piece. So if that giant sized chunk comes off and hits you, it has a tendency to not be very nice. Of course, it's always nice if you could keep the bark on a natural edge piece, but that doesn't happen very much. You got to get the wood when it's winter time, and I can't always be that particular on when the wood arrives, my guys, a couple of different people that gives me some of the wood, I have no idea when they're getting it. And So that's that issue. Like I say, it's got figure from there to there. I was thinking on this other side there was. It's also a crotch, so there's feathering going down through the base of it as well. That we may lose a bunch of, depending on how deep it goes. And this is a Norway maple. So this is one you definitely want to turn when it's wet, because it'll turn fairly easily wet. But once it's dry, it is Norway maple is the hardest in the maple family. So it is very, very hard. It's almost like a paper that you're peeling off here. The very first layer of the bark is very thin. That should be good enough. So this would probably make sense, more sense maybe. We just go to get the mouse over here, go to there. That way you'll be able to see in both directions. Like such. So that should work. And since we're already doing big bowls, lays on the low speed belt. So it means I have lots of power and not lots of speed, which in this case is what we're going to need. I did say that it was, I think it was 12. Yeah, it's 12-inch blank, 12-inch diameter now. So if we're lucky, we can manage to get 11 inches out of it, something along those lines. So first order of business is going to be flatten this bottom off. Make sure everything is good and tight, because it's definitely going to want to bounce because of it being way out of whack. So make sure I'm standing off to the side when we turn it on. I'll just make nice little itty bitty cuts. As you can see, the tool wants to bounce, so that's me being a little bit impatient and not allowing it to cut. I just want to flatten this out. This is only turning a little over 400 RPM, so it is very, very slow. There's the figure coming through. That's kind of what I was looking for. Here's the flame part coming in here. This is also a little bit of the leftover part of the branch. More figure there, which is what I was after. This is also when I get to see what's going to be there.
So that should be flat enough. We'll lose some, but we won't lose a lot because we're going to have some nice figure there. That figure runs the whole way up through as well. So it'll kind of be two areas of figure. You almost never can get them that they're figured the whole way through. So we'll get us a mark for our tenant. And we'll grab it with the big chuck as well. Because if I didn't, I was just thinking, if I did it, this being the bottom, that being the top, but that wouldn't work. It would have to be very, very small. I think this will work all right. Like I said, it's very wet. Bring the tool rest up a little bit just because my parting tool, which is what is grounded at an angle, it wants to be cutting more on the center line. Does a better job this way. Get into that corner, then I'm sort of just dragging it to the left. Trying to make sure we're either flat or a little bit concaved in there. A little concave is actually a little bit better. So that's all we're going to do from that side. And now switch it around. Get it in the chuck. This is so out of whack, it doesn't want to. Usually if I drive that drive center in there tight enough, far enough, it will usually stay in place. But in this case, it's too much out of weight distribution is considerably wrong. Which is also why this will take a little bit longer to do this than some other ones because of the weight distribution. Don't flip it over and bang your fingers into the chuck. It would have been better if I'd have closed the chuck down a little bit further before I started. Oh. I didn't mark that quite so well, but that's okay. It answers an interesting question, though. Less of a gap between that one. It's almost like one of those jaws is a little bit out of whack. I don't think I've ever had these off since I bought it. So we're going to look at that. Because that should not be, the gap should be even all the way around. whether this person didn't put them on in the right order. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. They're in the right order. It's just rather strange. That screw wasn't overly tight. Neither is that one. That's unusual. Usually there's a cotton picking tight that you got to work to get them off. So now we'll just have to do a tiny bit of little maintenance here. And just sort of snug them up. I won't tighten them the whole way. A lot of people say that you should take and close the jaws and then tighten them up, which personally I don't see where it makes a difference, because they're a tapered fit to start with. It's a tapered bolt, so it's going to draw in to that taper anyhow, almost no matter what you do. But we don't want any dirt in there, because they put it. Almost looks like there could be a little bit of lubricant in them screw pocket there. Yeah, somebody's bright idea that would help make them not get so tight, but also is going to give them the opportunity to work themselves loose. Yeah, they're not very tight. So that's somebody's claim that you should turn the whole way in and then tighten them. Like I say, I don't necessarily. Maybe some of the cheaper chucks that would make a difference, but I don't think with the Vic marks they're machined quite well. I don't think it's going to make a whole lot of difference. Might make a difference though if they're nice and tight. So now we're tight. Okay, start over.
Now they look even, so it's definitely something a little out of whack there. So we'll get that in there pretty close. As always, we're going to stand off to the side and return the speed down. We're going to bring our speed up till we get some good vibration, which is not going to be very high, that's for sure.
We should stop and take a look at one more thing. See where we're actually super close. We're super close in here. Not so much out there. It's almost a little too close in there. Because we want to get rid of some of this. Definitely want to get rid of some of this hump in here so that we can get things to be more balanced. I'm going to move very, very slow because of the slowness of the speed. So we're starting to take some of this corner away. And we want to keep our tool rests close if we can. Like I say, you can see that it's quite well out of balance. Because when I let go of it, this is our close side. Once I let go, it still wants to go to the bottom. And you see me keep reaching over. I keep trying to increase the speed a little bit. Kind of makes for a slow process, but be worth it in the end because there's some really nice figure to it. I think I might go and switch to the bigger bowl gouged. Just by virtue of it's heavier, so it won't bounce at me quite as much. Of course, part of the bounce is me trying to go faster than what it wants to go. But each part that we take off, we're getting it a little bit more in balance. And don't try and take such big bites. That'll help too. Will be a pretty shallow bowl. But we're making progress, slowly but surely. We're not quite. Well, I thought I was getting closer to being round down there than what I am, but it's okay. We're round, halfway around. Lots of figure. Should be some more in here somewhere. So as you can see, just by virtue of what I've taken off so far, as I spin it around, it doesn't necessarily want to stop and go back to the bottom. So that's a big part of the plus. Because every 50 or 100 RPMs I can gain on speed means the air pockets go by faster. So once we get it to solid material, it makes it so much easier. So it feels like we're sort of solid the whole way out to there. Yep, right out to that edge. So that's a plus. Because now that we're more so in balance, I'm gonna check our chuck because it is wet wood, so it will compress. I'm gonna get rid of the tailstock, take that off, and then I'm gonna work on being able to make sort of push cuts around. It should make it a little bit easier. I mean, I could just get rid of this nub in the middle and bring a tailstock back up, but I sort of have faith in my chuck that also seemed like I was a little above where I wanted to be cutting at. So now we can actually come back over here, out here somewhere. And don't take such a big chunk. It's still not going to like that. It doesn't always cooperate because of the intermittent cut and no speed to go with it. So I'll just come back out here, get rid of more of this, true up the outside. And then we should be able to sort of go to town on it. I think the way it feels where it should be, I don't know, there's still a big gap there. I'll go out here and clean up this front face so I know where I'm going to, because it is pretty far out of whack out there too. These are not overly easy to cut on the bandsaw because it is a pretty heavy piece of wood. And this is very hard material, even though when it's wet. Like I say, the Norway maple is the hardest in the maple family. No, we're not there yet. I still see a flat. Just two flats. So probably one more cut out here, and then we'll be able to, should be able to bring some speed to it. Probably could bring some speed to it right now. Yes. Okay. One tiny little flat area, but I'm not going to worry with that one too much. No real point. Because we still have to shape everything out there. That's a little too close. So now we'll see whether it'll allow us to go around the corner. Don't think we took quite enough off it yet. Tiny little bit left there. But we do have some nice figures, some nice color to it. So that's what we were hoping for. Beautiful figure coming down through there. It's a shame it isn't more of it, but you can only get what you can get. I think I'll just cut a couple miles of chips. So that one. Do have a third one to go to. And we won't be real fussy on what our shape is going to be because we're going to leave this probably probably about an inch or inch and a quarter thick. So this will have to dry. So we'll probably just give it sort of a round bowl shape. But as you can see, the goo, that's water running down the tool. Get them in my tool rest with the 1/2 inch gouge. I don't want to hang over a ton. Because then it will become sort of aggressive. So we're clean all the way around. Sort of a nice uniform shape. Nice figure that runs the whole way down in through there, up there, and to there. I say nothing on that side there. When we get to the top, we're going to cut back down in. We're going to get rid of this brown stuff because there is a evidence of a tree. It's where the other half of the branch came through there. So that needs to go bye-byes. That's just a place for it to crack as it dries. So we'll eliminate that problem. How do you like them apples? Don't need to measure anything because it's already there. So we need to cut on center. Tenon doesn't need to be giant size. We'll get rid of that little ledge right there though. So the little ledge is the place that it would dry faster than the rest. Another place for it to decide to start to crack. Clean up the tenon with my spindle gouge. Come back in here to the center. Sort of flatten that out a little bit, and I'll put a little divot in the center so that I know where the center is. Didn't do a very good job there. So that when it dries, I could also bring the tailstock up and mark it too, which is always a good idea. So you have multiple marks. So then in a year from now, when I get it back out, I have a good place to start. We'll just turn that in, give us a nice ring mark. And that's that. Now we're ready to, I did leave it on the bigger jaw, so all we're going to do is flip it around, hollow the inside out. And I did what I think I did. Yes, I did. Must have knocked them calipers out of whack. That tenon is actually now too small. That chuck. But if I went to the next one, I'd be way, way open. I'm not going to do that. Could actually, I've seen people do it. You could actually put two separate tenons in there if you wanted to. But we're not going to do that. We're just going to come out here. We needed about another 1/8 of an inch. Or do we want to just go with the smaller size? Decisions. That's more than enough. More than big enough to hold it. Now, make sure it has a little concave to it. Oh, let's go. A little smaller. I'm trying to figure out why. Yeah, they moved. What I was doing. I had these. Thought I had these set for this one. So we'll just make it set for this one. Let's just hope the other one is set right. We'll find out here pretty directly. Would have been nicer in a lot of ways to have left the bigger one. And we want the grain running with the jaws. Yeah, so that one's set. That's plenty big. It's still about 2.5 or close to 3 inches for the tenant size, which is still plenty big for this. Big enough. We're still at about 11.5 inches. We're going to lose 1/2 inch there right off the bat. Because at least we're going to lose some of it. I'm not worried about the dark color there, but that is a knot, or it was a branch coming through there. So we change things, we'll step off to the side, and we'll bring our speed up to where we get a vibration. Now that we have things in balance, we should be able to actually go pretty quick with it. Maybe not quite that quick. So now we're like 955 and 955. Which is going to make the cuts more efficient. We just have to figure out how much we got to lose out here right off the bat. We definitely don't want to touch it while it's spinning. Knot goes in. It's going in on an angle, so if I leave my inch or inch and a quarter out here, I think we'll be okay. I'm going to get rid of this razor blade edge. That would certainly slice you right open. Definitely need to lose some more of that. So it's a little bit of a, right there's just a little bit of a pith that's going through there. Like I say, part of the old branch. I'll get rid of some more waste material here. Whatever I just took off right there, threw it out of bounds. For some reason. I'm not sure. This is shade high for the center point. So we're getting rid of this brown stuff here is probably a little bit heavier or something than the rest. So as I took some of that away, all of a sudden it picked up a nice chatter. And once again, another gouge that's not as sharp as it could be. So we'll switch over to the 40 degree. I think that one was freshly sharpened. And I can go both ways. I could be going straight in like this, but when I do it this way, that way I'm using both ends of the gouge. Both the cutting edges. That way when I have to go sharpen, things are both sides are dull. I'm not sharpening one side because I need to. I guess if there's an advantage of turning at a slower speed, it doesn't throw the chips quite so far. That way I can keep pushing them down here on the floor. It's a little easier to pick up off the floor than it is elsewhere. That probably should be okay because the pith is actually sort of rotten on it. So it's kind of popping it out anyhow. So we're going to need our dividers, our calipers. And use the bigger ones. And I'll set this so it's about a 1/16 or so away. And we're doing good right there. Thickness wise, we're at 1.25 inches. And I think I'm just going to leave it at the 1.25 inches too. A lot of times you could go maybe just a little bit smaller than that, a little bit thinner here, but there's really no, it's kind of, if you go smaller there, then it just means we have less wiggle room to play once it's dry. And we might want to make it a different kind of a shape. And we're going to get some chatter because we're getting out pretty far out on the tool rest, towards the end of the tool rest. Less support out there. Still got our figure coming down through. Some of it. Looks like this is going to be another one of them that the figure is going to be more on the out when that comes through. Still have a little bit left of that branch. See if I can get through the vibration. Which we did. So now we should be able to cut much more efficient. See, that's rotten. Down in there.
The last little part of the branch, and this is rotten. So my tool's getting dull, but I think I'm going to go back in here because I know very good and well that's also what's knocking the edge off of it, is that kind of stuff there. So I just kind of like grin and bear it a little bit, and we'll go in there and clean some more of that away. And then we're going to go sharpen everything. Just didn't get it all. See if I can take a little chisel and knock that out. As you can see, it's rotted wood, but a lot of times there's other crap in there with it when it's rotten. You see the dirt falling out of it. So that should be better. So the 1/2 inch one is dull. That 5/8 was already dull. We have one more 5/8 that we can pull out. Actually, I might even have 2 more. This is the good part of having sort of multiple ones. Kind of lazy part of having multiple ones, I guess you would say too. It's really more the fact that I have to use 2 different grinds and basically two different size bowl gouges. I have the 1/2 inch and the 5/8. The 5/8 or the 1/2 inch is what I use most of the time. For most of the work that I do. The 5/8 ones are, and it's considerably heavier weight-wise. I mean, you can make some much bigger cuts with a bigger gouge, but and I can also hang over the tool rest considerably further without picking up a vibration. Thing has already started to move just by virtue of relieving the stresses in the center part in there. As I bring the tool back up in here, it's sort of trying to bounce a little bit. So that's the indication that it has moved already. And now we got to dig our calipers out of the pile of chips. That's also why this set of calipers is very rusty. Ooh, that's what I was afraid of. And now we're going to go back up to the top and we're going to take a little bit more off. I was thinking I was going a little bit, I wasn't following my outside contour as well as I should have been, because I am a good solid 1/8 of an inch thicker down there than I am up here. And I want this to be very consistent.
because the more consistent I can be, the better it'll be for it to dry. So we're going to take a little bit off up here. And we'll just sort of go part way down and just keep on making it smaller and smaller. So eventually we get to nothing down there. Which I know I didn't get a very good shape on that, but it is a rough turn bowl, so I'm not really totally concerned about the super duper shape. I think that'll be okay. Definitely don't want to go, I want to come around the corner from there. This is what happens when you're doing, everything I've been doing here lately has been dry wood that I've been going right to a finished size right from the start. I'm not really having to think too much about the thing of paying attention to the super pay attention to the wall thickness. And just take a little bit more of that down. And then we'll grab Big Daddy here and we can do the bottom of this, providing that it's on center, not quite. Because all I really need to do is make this a curve from there over. And that'll be good enough for what we're doing. This is the bottom bowl gouge. It is really used just for what I'm going to do with it here. Anytime I use it, but it does do a very good job as far as the bottom of the bowl goes. It will cut super cleanly across the bottom. It's just a little bit different to get used to using, that's all. Okay. I can take a little bit more out of there because we have a tenant down there, which is going to need to dry as well. And I left a ridge right there, which I want to get rid of. Other than that, this is about the same thickness as this already. Like I say, that can be a little bit thinner down there, and you can sort of get away with that one. But this thing, like I say, the moisture's going out of it, and even to come back up into here, the tool's bouncing. So as we're turning, we're relieving the stresses in the wood, We're also losing moisture. But you see the shavings that the bottom bowl gouge produces. It's almost like skews type shavings. They're very long and very pretty and wispy and all that good stuff. So that's basically one done. We're going to have to clean up a little bit first. Take this one off and want to clean up our shavings because I'd have nowhere to stand otherwise. We'll go back and we'll sharpen all of our tools as well. And then we'll do the other one, which the other one is going to be a natural edge. And this cute little process does make a lot of shavings. Be a little different if I didn't have a cabinet underneath my lathe, that more of them would fall to the floor, but need a place to put all my stuff. So, and I think what I got on the floor is probably going to fill up the third of the contractor size garbage bags from yesterday and today. It does generate a lot of chips. There's 2 of them already in the truck to go to work with me, so my guy can get them on Monday. This we need to mark. So Norway and Maple. Today is the 9th. And then once we do the other one, then they will go in a paper grocery bag. At which point the bag gets taped shut. And then it will sit in that bag for 8 months to a year. This one will probably take the full year. It is plenty wet. Who knows what that is? A little bit of bark inclusion in there too. But that's what we do with them. I'm going to find a good place to sit it so that I don't sit it on something wet. And might as well just start a new bag. That other one is almost full. And these make very big shavings. So you don't quite get as many in a bag as maybe you would like, but it also means the bag is not quite as heavy to lift. Because these are the contractor size bags, and they're pretty good size. You know, if I fill them up with some like normal size sawdust and stuff like that, they can be very, very heavy. Of course, you pick up too much at one time. There we go. The idea is to clean up the mess, not make more of one, but it doesn't always work that way. Okay. That's that one. Get my drive center. We'll get set up to do the next one, and then we'll hop over to the grinder and get us some nice sharp tools to be ready to go to town. This one is, I have to measure it. I think this one is probably about the same. It's either 12 or 13 inches in diameter. It's all out of the same log. Like I said, I chainsawed it in half yesterday. And I sort of had the bright idea. Normally when I saw just plain kind of logs, I will usually take about an inch or so out of the center of them to make sure that I get rid of the pith all the way around. And that's going to hold it. I have to move things around. I think I can get that for it. Yeah. Okay. Well, I decided I'd do that with this one. I'll have to show you the little blank that I got out of it. I'm not quite sure what I want to do with it. It's only about maybe an inch and a quarter, inch and a half thick. But it has some really, really outstanding grain to it. Because it is the very center of the crotch. So it has the feathers going all the way around. And I have the tool resting in the wrong place anyhow, because I need to. So used to done all these flat rim bowls in the last week and a half or 2 weeks that I kind of forget what I'm doing here. So the less distance I have hanging out of the live center and that, the better off I am. Less vibration. And I put the plastic around them. I did that to them yesterday. Keeps the air off of them. Keeps them from starting to dry out. This one has a little bit of the hint of the pith in it, which is sort of rotten. So this one has a low point here. And would have two higher points there, and of course one high point there. So now we have the decision to make. Is the bark going to stay on? I don't think so. If I can move it and peel it away right now, it ain't going to stay on. Nope. So once again, we're going to just take it off to get my chisel. Because it'll come off at some point, and the some point is usually when you're turning it. Like I say, then it's going to whack you in the fingers or the head or something along those lines. And even if you get it to stay on through the turning process, the drying process, it still can break off pretty easily once you would have a finished finished piece or whatever. And heavens forbid if you would give it to somebody or sell it to somebody or something or other, and next thing you know, the bark falls off. Not to mention that's usually where any of the bugs reside. So it wouldn't be you wouldn't be top 10 on somebody's list to have gotten a bowl from you.
with the bark on it or something along those lines, and a couple months down the road or what have you, little friendly critters decide they're going to crawl out of it. Which still can happen, but like I say, most of them seem to reside in the bark area. Okay. Once again, there's evidence of some nice figure in this one. I kind of figured there would be. So we might be able to actually, with doing it as a natural edge, we might actually be able to get a little bit better figure in it. Once we get more of this stuff off. This papery stuff can be a very big distraction when you're turning, because it's going to break loose and start flopping around, and you have a tendency to jump back because you don't know what's coming at you or what have you. So I try and get rid of anything that's loose. That's just my philosophy. So let's line this up. I'm going to use my thumb and why? Because I'm on that one. Did my camera freeze on YouTube? Should have been paying more attention. Uh-oh. I might have totally screwed it up. Nope. I just refreshed it. Well, we can go strictly overhead at the moment. You'll be able to see a little bit more of what I'm doing. So I'm just going to use my thumb, my fingernail. I'll put it on a tool rest and find that high point over here. Spin it around. We're about 3/8 of an inch away there. Not quite that far away there. So if that one, this one here, this is going to be a challenge. So if I move that one over in that fashion, it actually was fairly close. And that didn't do any good there. So there, a little bit inside there, and we're on there. So I think that's going to be close enough. But we need to go sharpen tool. That's where we're going to start. Okay, so let's go to the grinder. And we'll get some things sharpened. And then we'll go back to making a mess. So we'll start with our swept back grind. Well, maybe not. Maybe the 5/8 was the last one I did. It must have been. So 2-inch setback. Should only take like 2 passes on each side to bring the edge back to where it belongs. And that'll work for the big one. Try and keep everything even. That's why I went back after that one a second time. This is my shorty. Trying to wear this one out. Because I want the half-inch bar stock that behind the flute on this one. Because Swerby does not have the same philosophy that Thompson does. This one has probably 5 or 6 inches maybe behind the end of the flute. I mean, I'm only going to get to go back about to there, and then the rest of this is just going to be a round bar. So I will be able to use it and make like a little round bar skew or something like that out of it. At least that's the plan with it. So now we'll go over and we'll do the 40-degree gouge. It's a different setting. It's actually a totally different jig, but it's just because I do have 2 different jigs. So I leave the one set for the 40 degrees. I didn't used to. I used to switch it back and forth because I have markings on it. And that should work for the small one. Basically the same rinse and repeat on the 5/8 one. Basically holding it flat on the wheel, I wiggle it back and forth, roll over to the center of the nose, do the other side, and go to the center of the nose. And it did not quite get that side sharp. The 350 grit wheel doesn't remove much material. So if you get a little nick or something in there, it takes a little bit more grinding to get rid of the damage that was done. So now we're ready to go back to making a mess. So we're going to need our swept back gouge because I'm going to cut from the top to the top down to preserve the edge on the natural edge part. So that's basically where I will start. Bring you back over here. Oh, yeah, no. Did I forget to do that? Shit. Sorry. I left you in no man's land. Oh well, we'll be back to grinding more. It's not really that exciting anyhow. Close this other curtain because that's the direction the chips are going to fly in. We're going to set our tool rest so that it's reasonably close. This is going to wobble considerably because, as you can see, when I let go of it, it stops at the bottom as well. So another one of these situations to where we're not going to go at a very high rate of speed. So we'll turn it on super slow. We'll just bring things up. Nice to be able to go a little bit faster than that, but that's what it's going to allow me to do, so that's what we're just going to have to deal with. This means that we're going to have to go really, really slow. Doesn't really mean that I have to take really little baby kind of cuts, but it means that I have to go very slow. And lots of force down onto the tool rest, and not into the wood.
Because I don't really want the tool to bounce. I get a little bounce out of it, but nothing real drastic. I also don't always go so much in a straight line doing this. They sort of have a tendency to taper it a little bit towards the bottom. It also meant my cut was getting considerably bigger than what it should have been. I do want to get the whole way off the end, which is usually the really problem child, because there's evidently one tiny little spot right there. That's the only thing I'm trying to cut. Otherwise, we've actually gotten pretty much the whole way around. I didn't address that though. So we're big there. We're really little there. You see what I mean by the hairs coming off? As I cut across them, now they become loose. It can be distracting. I'll go back here and pick up this cut here, get us around, and we're probably going to have to move our axis another time. Because even though this basically has two or three, actually technically 3 places or 4 places, I want to try and get it to be even. Can also just come back the other way. And get rid of that last little bit down there. Because, like I say, it's only not even quite halfway around. So there's our really, really low point. And the other side. So if we move that direction, we'll make another cut. Which, as it always does, throws things even more out of whack as far as the bottom goes. But I'm not really concerned about that. I'm concerned about what the top's going to look like. And I'm going to mess with going off the end. Because I'm just, yeah, that's what I thought. I was just about there. So that's going to be, won't be a lot of material there. That helped us there and there. So that's all right. That should be good. So now we can work on getting this bottom flattened out. And we're going to have to give us a little bit more room, keeping pressure on that not to make it, not so that it moves. Tighten everything down nice and tight. And then we'll work on getting this bottom flattened out. This gouge should be sharp enough to, definitely will be sharp enough because it's the opposite side. Because the right side of that, there's something, some woods have some silica in it. And with this having this much figure in it, it is knocking the edge of the cutting edge off of it fairly quickly. And I guess we could switch back to the other view, which would make more sense. I don't think I can manipulate that camera. I'll have to look at that some other time. Just give you a better idea as to what I'm cutting off. So let's proceed out here. No surprise that this is way out of whack in here. So that feels like it's actually hitting all the way. No, it's not. A little bit left there. You can sort of feel it as you're cutting that it's not. Could have moved my tool rest just a little bit. Not a good idea to move it while it's running now. It's still not going to let us. It probably won't let me go to what the speed I would like to be able to go to. Get rid of our corner. So that takes a bunch of the weight off of it. Once I did that, and we need to make this be a curve from the bottom to the top anyhow. So it's just a good place to get rid of material. We still need to make this flatter than what it is, because we need a good tenon in there. So let's get rid of all of our saw marks. We got a little bit of that brown tree branch left in there. Some nice figure running down through here. That's what we're looking for in a crotch figure. This one does not have a whole lot of it. And that's one of them things that maybe I should have taken that whole inch out of the center of it, because that has this figure the whole way through it. But it is what it is, so one gouged all. Anytime I have to put more force on it than what I feel that I should, it's dull. So I just give myself a flat area in there. And we got to figure out whether we're going to go big. No. Big is too big. These are definitely a decorative kind of a bowl. And I don't think I would get a very good curve to it if I make a tenon that size. So I don't. So we'll go to the smaller size tenon. Which is more than adequate to hold that. That's not really the issue. The issue is moving the tool rest. I can probably get away with going to a shorter tool rest. It might make it a little bit more convenient there. Even though I'll have to move it more often, but it's also going to allow me to get right over top of the center of the tool rest. So will allow us to speed up. Nope. A little bit, but not much. Now I'll start to make this a curve. Pretty much each time I make a cut, I'll probably have to move the tool rest just a little bit. So I can get back just a little bit further. And my focus is up here. I really don't need to look down to see what the tool's doing. We know it's cutting. And it's not super unsafe to move the tool rest on the bottom of this. You have to watch because my finger's out here. If I stick my finger in behind that, you're going to hear some less than nice words. But for the couple seconds it takes to not do it that way, it's probably better off. There's the difference between doing a unsupported cut versus a supported cut. It does not do a, especially when you move a little quicker at it, does not do a nice clean cut of a job. I'm more interested in getting rid of material at this point. Getting rid of what I don't want. We're not quite to the top yet either. But we need a little bit more. We need more off down here. We need our tenant. Doesn't have to be super thick. Doesn't make it any stronger. To make it extra deep. Actually, in a lot of ways, it makes it less strong. So I better go up here before I get too far along. And get rid of this last little bit up here of this part. And then we'll get us a final shape in there. Take nice little bites off of that. This is where I really have to look up at the top, because if I look down, I really can't see anything. We've gotten rid of them. It'll be an interesting looking piece. It'll look like it'll look like a heart when it's done. And that's sort of the gist of doing some of these like this, is you will end up with like a heart-shaped bowl. So we'll make our tenant. Just use my spindle gouge to make the tenant. Get into that corner, back the other way. Can be a bit challenging with the wet wood though. It likes to be sort of stringy, but I want it clean, a nice clean corner in there for the chucks to grab into. We did that, but it looks like we've got a serious concave there, but we're going to take some more of that away. So we'll sort of revisit that, I guess you'd say. So number 2 doll. We pretty much have to stick with the swept back grind. The 40-40 does not work if you can't push it around. It's not really cooperative to do it otherwise. So a nice sharp tool, and I would go nice and slow. I have ridges. There's definitely ripples there, but where I have torn grain up here, I have none down here. So now that's far enough out to where I should be able to pretty much get on the bevel. And make our curve. We're going to slow down when we get up here because we're going to soon hit, we're already hitting air spaces. I really want it to go the whole way off the end, but it's not going to totally cooperate there. That should be okay. So we have a tiny little flat up there. At this point, it's no big deal. So that's pretty much our outside shape. Close enough, good enough for this point. So we'll flip it around. Put it in our chuck, and then we'll hollow out the inside. And that will be that. As you see, that was driven in there hard enough that it was staying on there by itself, which is really what I wanted to do. That means you had a good solid grip on it, good solid driving point, and this was the one we used. Once again, we're going to leave this nice and thick just like we did the other one. We'll probably, hopefully, and should have, could have, should have. Let's see. No. I should have trimmed that down a little bit further. So just use my chisel. I'm really not totally worried about a center point on there. But the chuck is like right there at it. So we can't necessarily have that. Not very good enough. I guess chisel could use a little sharpening, but that's another day. That chisel there is actually small enough that it doesn't fit in any of the grinding setups that I have, so it gets done freehand on the grinding wheel, because that's pretty much all it gets used for, is to do what I just did there, is mess about with this stuff. Might as well go back to my longer tool rest because I will need it here. Eventually. So once again, we're going to find our high points, high areas out here. Because we have a few. So now here is where you can go back and use, I can go back and use the 40-degree gouge because it will do a cleaner cut on the inside, at least till we get down to where it starts to make the curve and starts to hit end grain. And then it's not so good. That's why the people that only use the 40-40 always have some sort of a bottom bowl gouge, because you almost have to, because this will not make the curve, and not to mention it's 40 degrees. If the curve becomes too tight, then it doesn't cooperate there either. But I switched to that bigger one, so I need to back up a little bit. Bigger tool, longer bevel means that I was going to get into where the bevel could slide down off the tool rest. So once again, we're going to bring it back up to where we're getting vibration, which is not very fast. And just like the outside, I'm going to have to go slow until we get solid material. And it will literally drill a hole in there too, if you wanted it to. Definitely a big bump in there. The bump goes in there quite a ways too. So I thought, I'm still not down to solid material there. I thought the way it was acting, that was the case. But we just have to keep sort of keep drudging through it. The other thing I could go a little deeper there. There's solid material. Always worth a try. Feel really crazy. Sometimes you can get up through the really bad vibration to where you can get it to equalize. But in this case, that's not going to happen. Maybe I'll do a little different attack angle, I guess. Call it. It really doesn't like it when it gets down there. Let's see, it's still not totally cutting the whole way down in. Right in that area is where it really doesn't like it. So we're going to leave this one just like the other one, about an inch or so thick. Because it will need to dry. So that means we got to get out into that area there. Even though I probably won't be able to see that when it's going around. At least gives me an idea where we're going to. Could also try doing it with the half-inch gouge. Maybe I'll be a little less aggressive. And are we getting close to our mark? Yeah, we're getting there. About solid eighth plus. But as you can see, we're cutting 3 places and we still have a big area that we haven't even touched yet. But we need to make these top wings, the high points, right before we go on down further. That should be out close to where we need to be. Yes. And we're actually going in the right. You have to pay attention with these because it's not very thick or not very deep. So your tendency is to go too straight in where we need to go on a curve all the time. Just have to make smaller cuts and go slower. You won't be able to hear it, but I can hear whenever I get the solid wood. It sort of changes, the pitch changes. Now once we're out here, we're trying to visually follow the outside shape. So I look left eye to the left side, right eye to the right side. You sort of can see the shape in there. I can see the ghost image. At least usually I can. So we'll see whether we can tonight or not. Wait, don't stick your hands under there. It was just about slowing down. It touched me, didn't cut me, but if it was at speed, it would have cut you. It would have cut me quick. So we're actually doing quite well. So we need to remove the material basically from there across down further, and then we'll just make a little bit of a curve in there in the bottom, and that'll be it. That'll be it for this one. Just so that I can leave it nice and thick and let it dry and twist and do all the good things that they normally will do. Of course, now that we got rid of the majority of that material, now it actually is going to balance up a little bit. So I gained about 300 or 400 RPM. You can see the difference that it made by the ease of the cut. Of course, the left side of the gouge is sharp because we didn't use it yet, but less resistance to it cutting, put it that way. So now we have choices. We can, we might be able to go down a little bit more with the 40-degree gouge. I can swing the tool rest in a little bit. And we should be able to go a little bit further down. Ultimately, we're going to go right back to our bottom gouge. Once again, it's moving. I go back up there and lay the gouge on where I had just cut. It was bouncing. That's why when you do any of this kind of stuff like this, that as soon as you relieve stresses in the wood, it's going to move on you. It may not move a lot, but every little bit adds to the vibration factor. So yeah, we're right where we want to be at the bottom, right there. So we'll knock some of that down and we'll finish it up with the bottom bow gouge. And their shavings are very, very wet. You can pick them up and you can feel them. You can actually, when you know when they're wet, when you can pick up a handful of them, and if you take them like you're making a snowball, and you squeeze them all together like that, and it pretty much stays in a ball, that's the good moisture content. It's probably it is throwing some water, but this is when it's kind of fun to turn. There's no dust involved. Cuts easier. It's basically instantly lubricated. So we'll go back to Big Bertha here. Work with it a little bit more because like I say, I don't use it enough. Especially the big one. I have two other ones that are pretty much the same grind. That on smaller size things, that's what I'm going to use. This one can sort of get you in trouble too because it really cuts so efficiently that you have a tendency to take more material off than what you may necessarily want to. See right there, even though it may not even look like it, doesn't really look like it to your eye, maybe. It's taking a good 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch cut. Very, very fine shavings you get off of it. So that's where you can get in trouble with it because it does such an efficient job. It is challenging to pick up the cut. You've got to get spun around there because this is cutting on the bottom of the flute to the left-hand side of the flute, not on the right side. If the right side comes around, if it comes down onto the right side, it will grab. So let's check our depth. I think we're probably pretty good, but yeah, with our tenant down there, yeah, it's almost dead on. I don't have a real good curve right here, so I'm probably going to make another cut just to basically just to work with this tool some more. Probably the hardest thing to get used to using the bottom bowl gouges is the fact that the handle, it has to keep coming around towards you the whole time, which is what it should be doing anyhow, but a lot of times you sort of cheat and sort of push it with your left hand, where this one is strictly right hand almost on the back of the handle. Left the nub in the bottom, but that's okay. It's going to stay there because we're not done with it. Well, technically, we're done with it tonight, but in sometime in the future, when we get back to it, then we can do something about it. Other than that, at this point, it doesn't really not a whole lot of excitement on this one. And I think probably even when we're done, there is some figure on the back side here. So once we get this down to, once it dries in that, we'll reach through the outside, we'll come back to the inside, and this will be about 3/8 of an inch thick when we're done. the majority of which will come off the inside, which should reveal any of the little bit of figure that's in it. There's some stripes running down across here. The outside here is a little bit of the flame. It does come up. You can sort of see it in the bark area. So somewhere down in here, there's going to be some interesting figure or pattern to it. Hopefully. Otherwise, it'll be kind of bland and boring. It does have almost like a mineral streak or whatever running around the top edge, but there is some of the figure does come through there. So hopefully more of this will show up at that point down on this side. Hopefully. Like I say, it gets to go take a very long nap. So right on the bottom of it, the N, maple. I'll pull that out a year from now and I'm like, what does N stand for? But I usually can remember those little details. At least that's what my wood guy told me it was. He said it was the he called it the Norwegian maple, but it is the hard maple. So unless anybody has any questions, comments, I think that's going to be a wrap for me. Because the other work that I need to do is actually sanding work. It's not very overly interesting to watch, but I can stay on for a little bit. Got to clean up so I have somewhere to stand first. The other thing when you work with wet wood, then you got to make sure you clean things up pretty well. Any of the steel parts, at least, anyhow. Things will rust fairly quickly. Not so much the tools, but lathe bed and that kind of stuff. Gather up all my cutting tools. Really need to get out of that habit of laying them back there because they're covered in chips. Which is how that set of calipers got so rusty. Because I laid them back there and covered them up with chips. And to make matters worse, I picked up the big handful of chips and did not feel them in the pile of chips, and they went in the garbage bag full of wet chips. And I was sort of lucky that I actually discovered them before I got rid of the bag of chips. And I think at that point in time they were going out to the trash rather than going to somebody. I now have somebody that takes all the chips. So he would bring it back to me, but if it was metal in there, it would definitely be rusted very quickly. Lots of tannic acid in that kind of wood when it's wet.
where you need the man-size dustpan. So that's basically about 3/4 of a bag full of chips in 2 bowls. So it does generate a pretty good amount of mess. So I'm going to think about it here. What do I have? This one does need the tenant removed as well. Shoot, I didn't need to take that chuck off. Forgot that. We'll start by sanding the inside. I may just sand it and finish the inside and call it quits as well. This is one I did yesterday. This white is sort of an area that's sort of starting to decay, basically. So it was rather difficult to get it to cut cleanly. It also had about 18% moisture in it, according to my moisture meter, which is way too much to actually sand it and finish it. So it went through about, I don't know, 10 or 12 cycles in the microwave, 45 seconds a shot, on high, on cook, basically. And dust collector can go over about there, or we can just move this wrong way, that way. Actually, I guess we could just show you from that direction because it's all that we're going to see. So yeah, we'll go to there. So that is one way to dry them. This was generally, it was not nowhere near as wet as what the two that we just did. I have tried to dry some that were that wet. It takes a lot, it takes considerable number of cycles through the microwave, but it will work. It just takes a lot longer than what it does to, I mean, even if I was to take them 2 bowls and let them sit and dry for a month or 2 months and then come back to it,
it would do a considerable difference. Now this is going to be out of this. This one will show you very quickly how out of round it is now. That's kind of a downfall of drying them quickly. Let's see how well it does on the inside. I could sand it with hand sandpaper as well if it gets to be too far out of round. I'd kind of rather not do it that way, but it is a possibility. It also switched to a soft pad. Would help it too. Just looking for anything that's going to cause me aggravation somewhere else. That was 120 grit paper, which is normally where I start. Sometimes you can start with like 150, 180, but it's almost better off to start a little bit lower. Unless the wood is really, really soft, which this is actually white birch, it can actually be a little troublesome if you sand it. If you were to sand it with something below 120 grit, then the scratches become very, very deep. But it is dry, not gumming up the sandpaper, so I didn't recheck the moisture on it on the tenant. I just go by feel. If it feels cold to your hand, the chances are that's moisture. And if you notice, I go across, sanding the inside here. I go across the right, I come back across, and then I flip to the bottom side of the disc and come back across this way. That is basically like sanding if I was to stop the lathe and sand in reverse on that side. Or sand in reverse, period, on that. So it gives you a very, very good sand and helps sort of speed the process up a little bit. And I brush all the dust out each time. I'm more concerned about any residual bits of grit that get left behind. And then I go to the next higher grit, and all I'm doing is grinding them little bits of grit back into the surface and leaving me the previous grit scratches. So that's her inside done. Ready for finish? You know what? Since this thing basically has two tenants, thing has moved enough that it's also why it's wobbling. It wasn't quite seated tight against there. That's okay. We're done with the inside. So we'll jam it on there. Need a couple pieces of paper towel. You don't want to leave any glue behind. And we didn't really leave much of a center point. I think that's our center point. Close enough. Because we're not going to, the only cutting we're going to do on this eventually will be to remove this tenant. As you can see, this has become egg shaped as well. We will hand sand that with sheet sandpaper. And it really won't matter that it's no longer round. So we got to sand our bead, finish forming the bead basically. Is this I don't too often actually get a really nice bead on these. A little bit of sanding with 180 grit paper takes care of the. What I leave is there's like a little cone on top, a little crown on the top of it. I use the cut edge of the sandpaper to get into that groove in there. That way it's not trying to make a bigger groove. We're going to sort of closely inspect it because when I'm cutting it the way that I am, I can leave some not so nice areas in there. It doesn't help that it's way out of round now, but I don't feel like recutting it, because that would be an option there. Just kind of do the best you can in there. Definitely moved quite a bit. More than what you would think they would move. That's all part of the drying process. Not perfect in there because it's difficult to get in there, but the bead looks nice, so the rest of it I can do with power sanding. And I can get pretty far down in there in that groove. So now we'll spin in reverse. And why I spin in reverse is pretty sort of self-explanatory right here. As you can see, all the dust goes right over the top and right into the dust collector chute. Push too hard on it and you'll stop it. No tool marks, no bumps, lumps. Proceed. And I really didn't try to get way down in there with the 120 grit paper. By virtue, if I bang into that, then I put big scratches. And as you can see by the amount of material that sawdust coming off of there, it's removing a fair amount of material. And it does it pretty quickly. Guess I need to get this done. Need to get these all. There's 4 of them in total. Well, actually 5 of them in total. One is actually completely done, but one of my wife's friends decided she should have 5 of these for Christmas. And I'm like, I don't have 5 blanks of that size, rough burn and dry. So I did have some material, enough for 3 of them, that has been around long enough that the actual full-size blank was dry enough to actually turn, sand, and finish all one time. But those blanks have probably been around for 6 years or more. But these white birch ones, they've probably been around for 3 or 4 years, maybe longer. I don't know. Time-wise, I'm not necessarily very good at marking logs, the half log. That's the one I cut them. I couldn't find any markings on these. I should get down in that groove a little better. There's kind of a nice detail to put the beaded foot on them. But it also makes it more challenging to sand and make that nice and neat in there. And I'm sure this outside rim has now gotten sharp, for one. So that will do with sheet paper carefully. Still a little bit of torn grain in there. But I'm not going to get. These are not what you call gallery pieces, so I'm not going to get too excited about it. I'm going to go back to forward. I'm going to use my sheet paper. I'm going to hold the ends of it, and I'll just round this corner. The sheet paper will bounce with the piece. So I did 320 and 400 that way. And I'll go back with 800, and I'll sand the whole rim by hand, making sure that it's nice and rounded over. Not a big round over. I don't want it to be sharp. And I can even do the whole piece, little random orbit on the whole piece with the 800. It's going to remove any, it's going to do 2 things for me. It's going to remove any scratches that might still exist that I can't necessarily see until I put finish on, because your eye can't pick up the 800 scratches. Also made me look at it harder. And I'll take a paper towel, which is very good dust collection, dust removal. So our next step is we're actually going to finish this inside and out, and then we're going to be done. That way all this piece needs is the tenon taken off of it. and buffed. And I should be able to get that done maybe some evening this week. If not, it'll get done on Friday, and they can get delivered on Saturday or Sunday. So that will be a completed project and make somebody's Christmas, I guess, nice for them.
And put a little bit of funds into the shop fund, because nothing's free except the wood usually. Most of my wood is free, but everything else costs money. Some of which cost lots of money, but we'll need 3 paper towels. And we'll go back to overhead. And we can come in a bit. You'll get a better view of what we're doing. So what we're going to finish with is the Parfix 3408, which is a slow setting CA glue, no odor, no smoking paper towels, and it has a 40-second time delay. What I did was put a little piece of polyester felt in there and made myself a little pad. And we're going to try and figure out where there's the end grain. End grain is going to soak up more than anything else. We're going to get lots on our pad. And we're going to start on the end grain. Rub it in. As you can see, it's flat out disappearing, which is what we want it to do. We want it to soak in, fill the pores of the wood up. And with our 40-second time delay, it doesn't sound like a ton of time, but it actually is. It's for the most part, you don't have to rush. This bowl is still 11 inches in diameter, thereabouts. And as you see, I'm not really rushing. I'm not farting around either, but I'm not in a big rush. It's dry. This will tell you whether it's not dry. If it's not dry enough, this stuff will set up in a matter of seconds, because super glue requires moisture to cure, to set up and cure. So if you were to use this product in a place like Arizona or one of them kind of places where they have literally no humidity, you have to use an activator on it, where it will not set up. I sold some to a guy that lives in Arizona. I've sold it to a couple different people that live in Arizona, but the one in particular used it and emailed me, tells me that, hey, this stuff didn't set up and it's been 2 days. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, first question, where do you live? And he tells me he lives in Arizona, and I'm like, yeah. I said, and your humidity right now is what? Well, my humidity is like 8%. That little groove in there would drive you nuts to put a film finish in there. But this stuff allowed me to just run a couple drops around there. And gravity took over. That should be enough. It's not totally sitting on the surface, but then we're going to take a dry paper towel and we're going to wipe off the excess. And we're going to be very vigilant on getting the excess off, because if we leave it sit on the surface, it doesn't know what to do. If it can't soak in, it sits there and beads up like a well-waxed car after a rainstorm, or you washed your car and the beads of water sit there. Well, beads of super glue sitting on something means it dries that way, and then you're going to have to sand those beads off. It does sand fairly easily, but it also gums up sandpaper very quickly to do that. So I try and avoid that. Try and make this job easier, not harder. So what I'm looking for is the shine to go away or become very dull. As I spin it around in the light, I can see places that the paper towel's got enough in it. So why I use two. Because there will always be some places, it's usually end grain, because it's soaked more in, but as we spin it around, gravity takes over, and it starts to seep back out. So we want it nice and dry as possible in that groove. Because I will hit it with activator. So once we've done that, then we don't want to go back. We really don't want to go back after it because it's going. That reaction is fairly quick. So spin it around by hand. And it looks like it's dry. There again, Parfix makes their own activator. Heptane based. So I'm going to hit it 2 places, 3 places. I'm about 18 inches or so away. I just want the little mist to land on it. That's all I want. Now we can take it off, sit it down, and we actually have to change chucks to go back to that size tendon. But it's a very simple finish to use. Probably 90 or 95% of my turned items are finished with this. Things that would not be finished with this would be something that would be painted or dyed and grain filled. It will work with the dyed pieces, strictly dyed pieces. You just have, once again, you just have to be a little bit patient and make sure your dye is completely dry. But it's already dry to the touch, especially with the gloved hand. If I was to grab it with my bare fingers, you might find places that are sticky and white dust on it, which doesn't really matter because the dust really doesn't adhere to it, even at this point. So let's go back to the inside. And we'll do the same thing on the inside as we did the outside. I'm going to wipe it down. I used to wipe them down with alcohol, but I got tired of waiting for the alcohol to evaporate. And more importantly, there's a little bit of water in the alcohol. I would assume it's because of their, the distillation process or whatever. So if I went back after it, you think it's dry, and you go after it with the super glue. As I said earlier, super glue dries in the presence of moisture. So I would have places that would instantly set up, which told me that there's still moisture there. And I assume it was because of the alcohol. So I quit using the alcohol to clean them. I mean, I could and just let it sit for a day, but I'm kind of impatient. And I don't have a ton of time to work in my shop, so I try and make things easy and efficient if I can. because my work days are anywhere from, right now it's like 10 to 12 hours a day. I do work for UPS. So it means, I'm not the 8 to 5 kind of guy that gets to come home and come down here and do anything. At least till usually about Tuesday or Wednesday during the week. Sunday is my 12-hour day. I work Sunday through Thursday. So usually do I work a 12-hour day on Sunday. Usually Monday I'm usually not worth too much. So I just come home and get a bite to eat or whatever and hang out and watch TV or something like that. Rather than come down here and work on something like this. Whichever side you do second will take a lot less material because the grain has already been filled from the other side. So it can't soak it in as far. If you're one of them people that does things that are really thin, as in like 1/8 of an inch, depending on the wood, maybe even 1/4 of an inch, it may go right straight through to the other side. So when I do something of that nature, that's going to be that thin, I would take and finish the inside first before the outside, because the outside is much easier to sand. Because if it came through and you feel little like rough spots or whatever on the outside, and you just go back after it with some like 600 or 800 grit paper and sand any and all them little bits off and proceed on. Usually, like I say, if I'm doing something that thin, I will finish one side at a time. I will do the inside and then come back the next day, or at least a couple hours later, and finish the outside. That's pretty much it. Go back to overhead. In a second here, once I get this off. It's a different looking bowl with that white stuff in it. There's 2 more of them over in the other room where the microwave's at. They've both had about, I don't know, 6 or 8 goes, something like that. That one there probably had more like 12 or 13. I didn't weigh it. I normally, when I do that, I weigh them. I kind of didn't do that with this one. But that'll sit for, well, in my case, it'll sit till at least Tuesday. But ideally, 24 hours. It has a 24-hour cure time. So leave it sit for 24 hours, and then I'll come back and buff it with the Vonex. You can use the abrasive paste. Since these are a little bit bigger, I've been doing some of these with the abrasive paste on the inside and then strictly buff on the outside. And I'll go back after it on the inside as well, but the buffing wheels just don't necessarily, this size one, no, it should be all right. The buffing wheel will fit down in there nice and neat. It's the wax one. So that'll be able to be buffed on the inside and out pretty easily. So that bowl, all in total, will have another 20 minutes to a half an hour because I have to remove the tenant yet. That I'm fortunate enough to have a vacuum chuck. So that will get grabbed on a vacuum chuck. I'll use the chuck itself, the 4-jaw chuck. I'll grab it, and I have an adapter for it, and it'll go right up to the vacuum chuck, turn the vacuum on, release the chuck, turn the tenant off, sand that bottom part, put the type of wood, my initials on it, and finish the bottom, and then it's ready to go. Other than that, that's good for me.
Time to go sit down and relax for, let's see, 8:20, about an hour and a half. Then off to beddy. So this is my Saturday evening thing. If you like what you see, especially if you're watching on this is being broadcast on YouTube as well. So if you're watching on YouTube and you could hit that little subscribe button, that would be wonderful. But otherwise, just stop back and check it out sometime. So we'll end the YouTube one. And then we'll go back over to Twitch.